Okay, so officially, good evening, everyone. I am Dr. Chelsea Ale. I am the president of the U.S. Professional Diving Coaches Association. We are very excited for you to either be here live with us or on the recording after the fact. We're really looking forward to having this conversation tonight about high school athletics, high school diving, also for beginner diving coaches. We know it's a new year and we're excited for all the new things that are going to be taking place in the sport of diving. For us, we are launching a high school committee for the PDCA that's going to essentially be here to sort of help with some of these questions that we have about high school diving, how we can make them more unified across the country, how we can give more resources to high school diving coaches, how we can get judging to be a little bit more fair in high school diving, and really kind of set like some standards, expectations around the whole country, or that's at least our hope with the high school committee. So we're really excited that we've picked our committee to start with that, and we're going to have our first meeting soon, and we'll have a lot more information coming. I want to preface by saying that just because we are doing this town hall, I know there's a lot of questions that can be asked, and we're not going to be able to get through all of them tonight. But we will have a lot of great resources that'll be coming out throughout the year too to help with everyone if there is more stuff that you're not sure about. Now, I did hit record for this, so everything that's going to be said today is being recorded. I just like to put that out there just to make sure that we all know that whatever we're saying is being recorded so people can watch it later. But this town hall is going to be a little bit different. We're going to have a panel, but we're also going to have kind of open dialogue and discussion between you all because people submitted questions in advance. A lot of people filled out the survey that we sent out before, which we really appreciate. We were able to compile that, get some really great information, get some questions to ask as guiding questions. But we also know that in the moment, you might have questions about things that you're unsure about. You want advice on things, you don't know how to handle things. So, diving coaches are great at sort of sharing expertise and knowledge. So, we want to kind of leave this one a little bit more open-ended, where if other people feel like they have something that they want to share, ask a question, something they're not sure about, I want you to be able to do that too. So we will start with the panel and some guided questions, but as we go through, if there's anything that you're not sure about or any tips or tricks that you want to share, please feel free to do so for that. So we have a couple great panelists for us. I'll let them introduce themselves and then we will get started. So the first one is our VP of Events for the PDCA. So Courtney Gills, can you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes. Hey, everybody. I think I have met most everybody on here, if not worked with you, but my name is Courtney Gills. I coach Atlantic Coast Diving in Jacksonville, and I pretty much run all of the high school championship meets in the state of Florida and have for the last few years.
Perfect. Thank you. Our next panelist is Charlie Collins.
Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie Collins. I am the head coach and owner of Alamo Area Aquatics Diving here in San Antonio, Texas. I am the high school diving coach for the Alamo Heights Independent School District, which is kind of a unique school district here in San Antonio, having only one high school in one school district, which is very unusual in this part of the country. Have had quite a extensive high school experience here in Texas and in California when I was living there. So I have a little bit of a unique perspective in working in high school and in club in two different states. So hope I can acknowledge and, share some information from that aspect.
Perfect. Yeah, we're definitely really excited to have you. And John Pearson.
Good evening, everybody. I believe I know most of the names and most people that are on the call right now. I'm based in Michigan, been coaching for 40 some odd years, mostly high school. We also have a small club up in just north of Detroit that where I coach. I'm active with the Michigan High School Swim Coaches Association, and probably for the last 15 years, I've been working kind of as a liaison with the Michigan High School Athletic Association to help them with their diving. I've been coordinating their diving regionals and state finals events since about 2009. So happy to help in any way I can and continue learning from this group as well.
Wonderful. Yes, we are definitely excited to have you all. You have a lot of knowledge in the sport of diving, but also in high school diving specifically. And it's also nice because you're in different states, so we can kind of see well maybe what different states think, do, and do differently. So to start really easy, no crazy questions. Overall, what is your biggest advice to coaches in high school? Or is like you wish someone had told you when you started coaching high school or something that you've learned over time that's if you could give one piece of advice to anyone, what would it be? Does anyone want to go first?
I'll go first. So my one piece of advice is season is very short. At least it is here in Florida. I know some states have a women's season and a men's season and it's separated. We're all together here in Florida and we actually start in late July, finish early November. So it's a very, very short season. And kind of covering a lot of the questions we're going to talk about today. Um, you have to be able to produce in a very short amount of time, keep the kids safe, and allow them to have fun. So you have to kind of figure out your season, make sure you have a schedule, make sure you know what you're doing and when you're doing, and make the practices fun. That would be my most, that'd be the advice I would give.
Yes, high school diving is definitely a very quick, fast season, which can be challenging when you have brand new divers, which is some things we'll talk about later today too. Charlie or John?
Yeah, I can jump in here. My biggest advice I can probably give to any young coaches or high school only coaches is, as best as you can, try to be there for your swim coach at your high school or in your district. Um, just the way how the rules are written, the swim coach dictates and can really make your life very, very easy or very, very hard. So making sure that you are a contributing member to the whole team altogether. And this is something I think we'll talk a bit later as a swimming and diving team. Knowing that you can help valuable results for your team through with diving and diving points is I think a big thing that a lot of coaches tend to forget. So just trying to make sure that you're in the confines, working the confines of your school and with your swim coach. I think this is, very invaluable if you can get off on the right foot on that for your season.
No, that is definitely great advice. I mean, having that positive relationship is really important. I would also say it's weird, but having that good relationship with lifeguards too. If you have a good relationship with lifeguards, it'll make your life a lot smoother and a lot easier, and they will do a lot more for you. And so, not to steal part of your thing, but I think that that also helps too. John, what about you? What's your
Chelsea?
overall? Oh, sorry, go
What
ahead.
I just wanted to we're talking about short seasons because Charlie and I have talked about this, and we've got Sage and Vicky on the line too, so they can attest. We actually have in Michigan, girls and boys are separate, which means we have two 12-week seasons. So we have 12 weeks to take to get our athletes and get them ready for a championship at the end of that 12-week season. So short season is a very, very big challenge because again, you've got swim coaches that are looking for results and you've got to make it fun for the kids. But the most important thing that I probably did, and I was actually an assistant swim coach for a long time too, so I echo what Charlie was saying. You've got to make yourself valuable to the team, but from a learning perspective, you got to find a mentor. You've got to find somebody that has been around for a while who can help you uh, with things you don't even know you don't know. Miska does a lot of mentoring, and that's something we've been pretty good about and working hard to try to mentor young coaches. But as a young coach or as a high school only coach, find yourself a club coach. Find somebody you can trust who can give help you learn from their experience.
Oh, I love that. I mean, mentorship is so important for people. It's so great. Like people are always afraid to ask questions, and I think it's great to find that mentor that you're comfortable bouncing ideas off of. Just a quick plug for the PDCA, just because of you said that, we actually just hired an intern who's going to be working this year solely on building a more successful mentorship program. So he's going to basically be working about pairing people in different levels in different states, and then working on networking and bouncing around the country as well. So we're going to try and help with that. So if you're interested in it in the future, definitely let us know because mentorship is incredibly important. So I guess based off what some of your comments were, the short season, everything, how do you sort of manage that, making sure your athletes are being successful, but also making sure that they're safe? And then you've got the ones who are brand new that have never dove before, and maybe depending on your state, the first week they compete, they're supposed to do a reverse dive for the first dive. Like, how do you get them ready, managing their expectations, but also making sure that they're safe at the same time? Because it's a very complicated process to do that.
I don't mind jumping in here on that. So, I mean, like I said, the biggest thing with the short schedule is just making sure that you have a plan knowing when the divers need to have specific dives, what week that looks like. How early do you need to start training specific things to make sure that the divers are safely executing that dive when it's ready or when it needs to be competed? Um, for us, we have a couple weeks preseason prior to school starting that we're allowed to work with the athletes. So we try to start as early as we can. We typically teach arm circle timing and jumps in every direction just to get them started. You know, the dreaded reverse comes up in week 5. So we start them doing more complicated skills or reverses kind of right off the bat, just so that they've got enough time to get comfortable with doing reverse actions before they actually have to try it. Obviously, trying to teach back dive before reverse dive. That way they've got a feel for it. But I try to get information out to all the parents and the divers way ahead of time. Here's what the schedule looks like. Here's the week that you have to do this particular direction. Here's when we start championship season. So, and I also try to manage each diver's expectations because not everybody's skill level is going to be the same. So having that individual conversation with the athlete, making sure that they know what their goals are just for them specifically, not necessarily as a team, is also really big as well. And then for me, a lot of my club athletes are also participating in high school. So I do rely on them a lot to kind of help with encouragement and, hey, that technique is a little bit off. Let me try to help you a little bit. And so it builds camaraderie on the team as well. And then probably something we'll talk about later with retention, once they build those friendships, those divers typically want to stay. If they're newbies and they aren't sure what they're going to do, they typically want to stay because they've built that relationship with the other athletes on the team. So that's typically how I try to manage everything for a short season.
Can I interject here? Can you hear me? Okay. Um, One of the things that I found that became more and more necessary as our world has changed is that you know, parents are a lot more involved in the high school situation. They're a lot more helicopter parents. Like when I was diving, kids, their parents just dropped them off at practice and took off. And so I think that like the last few years that I was coaching high school, which I had to stop doing so that I could help take care of dad, was I came up with this document called Diving 101, which I gave to Chelsea. And like there's some people, first of all, who don't even know what it entails. They're just complete newbies. And also there's stuff in there that what I would write in the note that went home for diving that like there is a chance that you could land flat and hurt yourself. But that's part of the learning process so that like, they're not surprised if the kid lands flat on something, because inevitably, if you're a beginner diver, that's probably going to happen at some point in time. And so I think that really, really good communication. And it got to the point where I finally had to come up with a document because it was like I couldn't keep track of all the things people wanted to know. And it also was good because that in there it also tells people how to run a table, sort of, and what the 101, 201, 301 means. So I think if they have a better understanding, then they'll know whether or not it's for them. And like when we would have a meeting, I would tell them, you just need to know that there are going to be times I'm going to ask you to do something. You probably might not think you're going to be able to do it, but I'm still going to ask because I'm not going to ask you to do something that I don't think you can do. So I think like communication for sure, letting them know. And then one of the things, depending on how much board time you have, and like when I was in high school, we had a 6-lane pool and we dived between the swimmers and the flags were up. So it was pretty interesting. And I think um, like the pool that I went to when I was in high school, now it's much bigger. They added on to it. So I can have kids I used to be able to have kids do lineups off the side while they're standing in line, or reverse dive lead ups after we taught them how to do reverse dive lead ups. And sometimes when they're doing them off the side of the pool, I stood behind them and I would have my hand up behind their back so that if they were close, I could shove them away. So things like that they could do off the side themselves in between so that they're not just standing in line. But that depends on how much pool space you have and maybe how safe the kid is, because some kids maybe just aren't safe. They're going to cut back into the wall. I don't know. But I think if you can give them more opportunities to do some things, then that works great. And you're right, like the seasons are so short that you really have to be targeted on what you're going to be teaching kids. In certain states and cities, like in Ann Arbor, there was a lot of good diving. So I usually had a good core of divers right off, which sort of helped the newbies because they could go, oh, that's what you want me to do. Um, but if you don't, and you're starting with complete beginners, you have to really teach them the basics and you have to do it quickly. It's a challenge. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, no, thank you, Vicky. And either your document is either currently up on the website or it's up there to go live shortly on there. So we really appreciate you sharing that with us. And if anyone has access to the PDCA's resources on our website, we've added a lot of them, but that document's a phenomenal one for especially beginner coaches to be able to hand that out to, or not even beginner coaches, any coaches to hand out to beginner divers and their families and everything. So appreciate you doing that. I also think what you said about doing stuff while they're waiting is great. I mean, having them model dives or practice their dives without actually having to go off the board is so helpful, especially in a high school situation. Anyone else have any thoughts about, the short season, how to help with that or anything?
Well, I have something to add to what Vicky was saying. Not so much the short season, but especially in high school, it is so important to be able to get the parents behind you and to be very communicative with them. Um, when I was coaching, I emailed them every single Sunday night. Every Sunday night. I told them if there was a problem the week before, I talked about that. I told them what we were going to do the next week, schedule, if any schedule changes, what dives we were going to do, what we were working on, where we were going. Because if you can get them on board with what you're doing and them to believe in you, they pass that on to their kids. And if you need help down the road with something in your athletic department, if your parents are with you, they can back you up and help you too. And so, I found that to be very important. I had very few parent issues because I did that.
And thank you for sharing that. I think that's incredibly important. Getting the parents to buy in, setting the expectations as well to like what they should and shouldn't do. Don't be too crazy helicopter parents and stuff. So definitely appreciate you sharing that because that's really important. Getting them to buy into it really helps.
I like what Vicky said about having stuff for the kids to do while they're waiting in line. Charlie, as you know, Stan Randall is notorious for the different drills and skills on the pool deck,
What
and,
can I come up
doing,
with today?
yeah, heel rises and flat hand drills and
Yeah.
all this sort of stuff. But it really makes a difference, and the parents are really impressed when they see this precision, all these different things that the kids are doing. They're not just standing there. But I do have a question for the panel. Do you? I don't coach high school anymore. Do you at your high school have cuts where you try to get the best divers only, or do you take everyone and anyone to try to expose the sport to as many divers as possible?
Well, my
I'd
high
be
school
willing to
used to
grab
be
that.
no cut. My high school used to be no cut. Sorry, John.
That's okay.
And pretty
Is that a
much it stayed that
policy?
way in Ann Arbor. Yeah, it pretty much stayed that way. But when I went to New Mexico, the first year I was there, and their season is together, boys and girls, I had 35 divers. And after 3 weeks, I had 5 kids who were literally diving off the side like this, and they wouldn't put their head down. And so I told them I thought that maybe, nicely, that maybe this just wasn't their thing. I appreciated them trying. So I basically cut them. And one of the parents wrote a scathing letter to the AD, but whatever, they didn't fire me. But I think if you can do it without cutting, because sometimes kids turn out to be great divers that you didn't think were going to be, but it also can depend on how much pool time you have. You can't have 35 divers and have an hour workout.
Laura Wilkinson comes to mind.
Yeah.
John, how about
So
you? Do you
I
have
was just
cuts?
saying, I also coach in Michigan, and everywhere that I've coached in the state is we've always had a no cut policy. Um, and I try to expose as many kids as I can. And just like you said, Steve, you never know where a really good diver is going to come from. Um, I've I've only had 3 kids in 40 some odd years that haven't actually been able to get up and down safely in representing all groups, including reverses.
Wow.
So well, you teach progressions, you teach skills, and some kids take longer than others. There's no doubt about it. But um, we've been able to go through and make divers out of young athletes that a lot of people didn't even think they could get. When I've had lean seasons, I've actually sent emails like for the boys team. I find out who didn't make basketball, and I send emails and invite them to the pool.
Wrestling.
Done the same thing. I did the same thing with volleyball. Did the same thing with volleyball for the girls in the fall. Who didn't make your volleyball team? And invited them for a workout. So to recruit as many kids as I can get.
Okay, but you just said you have a no cut policy, but you're going after sports that cut people. So is the no
Yep,
cuts in the non-revenues, shall we say the non-revenue sports?
absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Okay.
swimming and diving, track and field, cross country are generally no cut sports.
Okay.
So
Charlie, how about you?
yeah.
So typically I don't cut. I will pretty much take anybody. The only time that I've had to cut or let people go or, very nicely, I think you need to go into study hall or, try to get your subjects taken care of before senior year, are the athletes that actually don't contribute and don't want to be part of the team or learning. And we've all have gotten, a lot of those different athletes that come in and think, oh, well, I couldn't do baseball, couldn't do basketball, I'm too slow for track, or when I'll try diving. That seems okay. And they just try to get a PE credit out of it and not do anything.
Hmm.
So I do really make an effort to take everyone in as long as they're contributing to being the part of the team, still learning, still trying to be part of the process, even if they don't get a list, even at the JV level to compete. But if they're actively trying, I will keep them the whole time. And the times I've done that by the sophomore junior year, they can get a varsity list and can compete in some events. But recently, at my high school, I've actually had to tell some kids no. It's like, sorry, you can't just come here and just sit on the bench and not even try.
Hmm.
So that's the only time I would say I would actually have to cut somebody or let them go and get counselors involved to get schedules changed around. But I usually would take anybody as long as they're gonna put forth the effort to try and learn. If they're not a diver or if they're don't have the talent and they still have to learn it. So
Good.
yeah.
Thank you. Or Courtney, did you?
Yeah, so we don't have any policies about not cutting, so I don't know what some of the other Florida schools do, just statewide. I typically don't cut. I think there's only been one instance where we had a diver who just could not, as Vicky said, just could not go head first. You couldn't get her to go back, backwards without almost falling in the pool as well. So that prompted me to create some sort of standard. So now by the third week after training, they're expected to do jumps in every directions, front dive, front flip, back dive, inward dive. If they can show me those four skills, then I will continue to work with them. But otherwise, if we're still there trying to work on front lineups while you've got other people working on, trying to get their 11 dive championship list, it can really slow the practice down, make people frustrated. It's just not a good situation for most people. So I did kind of create that standard. I did have to get it approved by the swim coach for one of the schools that I coach at. But now that I use that for all the other teams because I coach about 14 different schools here in Jacksonville. So we don't have a cut policy, but I've only ever had to ask one person to maybe go participate in an instrument or something like that.
Thank you.
Perfect. Great question, Steve. And thank you everyone for your insight on that. John, you mentioned a great thing about reaching out to people that get cut from other sports and asking them if they want to come dive. One of the things we're seeing in diving is that maybe not as many people participate as we'd like to see. Now, sometimes we have too many divers and not enough pool time, which is a different conversation. But one of the issues is that we might not have enough divers. And how do we do a better job of sort of marketing to other people, trying to get more divers to come join high school diving and try it out? People might not know what it is, so they get intimidated and then they try it and they might decide they love it. Or to get like those multi-sport athletes that have an off season to do diving and try that out. Like, what are some other great ways that we can get people more involved in diving? But like I said, John, your ideas are wonderful. I love that, reaching out to people who get cut from other sports. So
At my high school that I went to and that I coached for many years, I've coached at all three high schools in Ann Arbor. But at Pioneer High School where I went, they had like an open house. So like you would come in and there'd be the water polo table and it would have like the championship trophy and it would have a couple people there and they would be throwing a ball around. And then you'd have the swimming and diving team and maybe we would have candy if you came to our table. So they did it like an open house for like the new kids who are the ninth graders or 10th graders who are just like deciding maybe they hadn't experienced a lot of sports before they got there. So sometimes you can get them that way. And I think especially for girls, they don't want to win the Olympics necessarily. They don't even care if they dive in college. It's a very social experience for them to be on a team, whether it's diving or otherwise. And I think sometimes that can be good because sometimes you get more for your money when you didn't even see it coming if somebody brings a friend. But I liked the open house kind of idea where people could come in and ask questions of all the sports at once. I thought it was a great idea by the athletic department.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good for people to see. Again, if they don't know what it is, then they can't really join it, right? So for them to see it, it's great. Anyone else have any other advice? Well, I definitely think, getting people who have a buy-in and bringing their friends. I know one of the high schools I coached in Tallahassee, we had like 25 divers from that high school because a couple of them would do it, then they'd bring their friends and they'd bring their friends, and all of a sudden the whole cheerleading team was on my high school dive team. So, it's just trying like positive word of mouth, and some of them are going to be exceptional and some of them not so much. But the more other people buy into it, and the more fun environment, I think it makes people want to join it more. Now, throughout the season, not every athlete is going to have a positive experience. Some of them are going to not have motivation. Some might get frustrated, especially because they might be doing a new sport and they're trying to compete a week after they start. What is some advice you can give to coaches about sort of helping with keeping that motivation, keeping that excitement, even when they're not, seeing the results right away in such a quick season?
Well, I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier. Every diver is going to be at a different skill level. So having an open conversation with them about maybe what your goals are for them, what you think, they're capable of doing, just managing that expectation probably.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
I
Anyone
think it's
else?
too like they don't do this anymore, I don't think, but the age group nationals and the senior nationals used to be right before the girls' season started in Michigan. So when I would be coming from those meets, hopefully I was diving my best. I was at my peak of the season, right? And then I would come back to Ann Arbor and I would be diving great. And then a couple weeks after that or a month after that, you kind of go through this dip. And so, especially for kids who've dived a lot, they're like, wait, I can't do my hour 1.5. It's my best dive. Oh my God. But I think even whether you've had experience diving or you're a beginner, I think there's an ebb and a flow to a season, even a short season. And so sometimes when kids think, oh my God, I'm horrible today, what's going on? I think it's a job, for us to just say, hey, happens sometimes during a season. And I would tell kids, I don't want you diving great right now. I want you diving great at the end of the season. So maybe just trying to let kids know what they could, more generally, what they can expect from a season as it
Chelsea.
happens.
Go
So
ahead, Ben.
setting expectations. So I mean, that's what with the new kids coming in, you set the expectations, explain to them, have a plan for them. We're doing it a 12-week season, so we lay it out what we're going to do and when we're going to do it, and what our goals are for the end of the year for the kids. And I'm usually lucky enough to have kids at different levels. So when I get the new ones in, whether it be freshmen or sophomores in their first year divers, they usually have somebody to train with some reasonable experience. So as we're talking about skills, we're talking about developing, they're going to see the skills that we want out of my experienced divers. And my experienced divers for the first couple of weeks of the season won't spin. They'll just do jumps, balance, and lineups for at least 2 weeks, and that helps the young kids actually learn how to properly jump up into a back dive as opposed to trying to put it do a modified backstroke start or something silly like that. So, but it's communication and really making sure that they understand the expectations. And if you can help manage those expectations, no, you're not going to win a state meet. You're probably not going to make it past a regional as a first year diver, but that's okay because we've got it. We've got a time frame to work with.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you said that, they watch the other divers. I think one of the things we all love about our sport is that camaraderie and everyone helping each other out and the support. You're essentially helping your competition get better. But I think that that's a great thing that we have too. But I do think setting expectations in at the beginning is very helpful. Another issue that we see mentally with people is fear. Our sport's very dangerous, it's very fearful. How do we help the divers get over these fears, whether it's a reverse dive, an inward dive, or just a fear of landing on their hands? What would be your best advice for that?
I'm not a big fan of using the word dangerous with diving. I think diving overall is a very safe sport when done under proper conditions, a compliant pool with a coach who knows what they're doing, a lifeguard present. I think our sport's very safe. Um, and I know that Lisa Werwinski, she's on the Department of Statistics at Miami University in Oxford, Ohio, and they did a study on diving injuries, and we're one of the safer sports out there. So I just wanted to put that out there. Just we as coaches, we don't want people to think diving's dangerous. It's fun. There's some fear to it for sure, but overall, under supervised conditions in a compliant pool, the sport of diving is very safe.
Well, I know when they were pulling diving boards out and stuff, and they're still doing it. I believe USA Diving has a position paper that was probably put together back in the
That
80s,
was
but
that was Janet Gabriel did
Janet
that back in the
Gabriel, right.
90s.
And
Yeah,
it would need to be updated, but everybody hears, oh no, it was a diving accident. No, they dived into 3 feet of water in somebody's backyard pool.
that's
That's
right.
not a diving accident,
That's
but
right.
it gets listed as a diving accident in the
Right.
statistics. But
Diving into a
like you
river,
said,
lake, hitting a log. Yeah,
if you're
they're
a
all lumped
program
into
though,
diving accidents.
then it's very safe, like you said.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the clarification, Steve. Yes, not dangerous, but can be dangerous if not done correctly, but can definitely
Yes,
cause fear for sure.
I
The
will
other
agree with
thing,
that.
the other thing, and John does this, I didn't have this at the high school, but John spots his kid, don't you, John? Or the
Well,
boy.
yeah,
That's another way
I'm
to take
lucky.
away the fear.
Yeah, I'm lucky. We have dry board, trampoline, and belts over just about everything. So for me, it's a lot easier because we can put kids in belts and teach them, you know, how to start and initiate rotation. It's like gainers. We start with reverse jumps and getting them up and away from the board, then teaching them how to actually get the arms through early and make sure the toes come up in front and things like that. But we didn't always have that. And going back to Chelsea's comment about fear is you've got to help these kids learn progressions. And before I had the advantage of the pool I have in Oxford, um, we used to go steal 2 sections of high jump pit and we pull out one section of bleachers in the pool. We would put that section of high jump pit at the same level as one of the bleacher steps, and we would do reverse jumps onto the mat and
Nice.
practice that way. What you find whatever you can to teach
Yeah.
progression safely so the kids build confidence. And somebody on the Facebook group just a few weeks ago had posted that, what do you do when you don't have belts? And there was Tommy posted some video, Charlie. Um, Tommy Law posted some video with progressions on the mats, and it was exactly what we do. And I was so happy he did it because that is exactly the way that we teach it. But if you do it in steps where the kids feel safe and can learn skills with confidence, then it's just a matter of taking that chance over the water.
That was a question I had for the panel and for anybody else on the call. How many people have overhead spotting over a drive or, a diving board versus a dry board or a trampoline and have access to it? I know some schools don't even allow a trampoline as part of their
Yeah.
risk management, but
Yeah, I have everything. So
Yeah,
I'm like John. It's easy for me to have access to everything and able to teach all, with all the bells and whistles and all the toys, that a coach can have. Um, but I have been in that situation where, especially in my first high school coaching gig when I used to live in California, when I moved out there, you're outside and there's no roof, there's no belts, there's no tramp, and you got to do the old school way, grab some extra shirts and you just do the progressions and it's time to send it sometimes. So I can, it is nice to have all the toys to help with that, but when you don't have that, you got to, do what you can, and
sure.
especially just focusing on the progressions to minimize the risk and kind of what you were saying earlier, Steve. Uh, Dangerous is probably too taboo of a word. I use the term risk, acceptable risk, and just kind of just risk in general, because I mean, I think that having an honest conversation with an athlete, it's like, yeah, if you do this the right way, you're going to be fine. But there's always just that little bit that's in there, and teaching them to understand, how to kind of overcome the fear within doing a certain action that they can then take into other parts of their home life going on. So I think that's another teachable moment for that. But even so, as long as you just help maneuvering with that risk in teaching the progressions and they get confidence, like we were talking about, you tend, 9 times out of 10, they're gonna do it and they're just gonna feel like $1 million afterwards. And that's the feeling that we all want them to have, you know. And if they take a smack or take a shot while they go and do it, at least they know they can do it, knowing that that's a possibility. And then in my experience, they've gone up and tried it again and gotten it on the second try. So
Yeah,
um, it just really just making sure the fundamentals are down as best as you can, doing the progressions as best as you can, and having that conversation with your athlete, about the risk and fear, and putting all the cards on the table and making it a teachable moment. So
it's good, Charlie. Thank you.
yeah.
And Chelsea, something else that we do, I do every weekend. So my Saturday practices for my high school kids are 8 to 10:30. And at 10 o'clock, from 10 to 12:30, our pool is open to any high school coach that can make it to the practice and bring their kids and use the facility. And so what we do is we walk them through. We'll have myself and an assistant coach at least that is available to pull ropes and help teach skills and help coach coaches. We're working on trying to develop coaches. We have a mentorship program with Miska, and I have a young lady that works with me, and she's over in Macomb County right now. And probably the best thing that made me feel great happened Saturday when we had an invitational, and I've been working with this young coach, and I had somebody look at me and say, "Oh my gosh, there's somebody over in Macomb County working on skills." Because we saw back and reverse dives that were going up and down, pressing out, hitting lines, and hitting the water. They didn't know that girl's been working with us for 2 years to learn how to teach those skills. But that was one of the best compliments I ever had, and they didn't know I had anything to do with it. But
Nice.
so what you do, you find a hub, find a center. Over on the west side of the state, Annie used to do stuff over at Calvin, where she would open her pool up to other people, with Legacy West, and work with kids. So just if you've got the resources, just make sure you're sharing them.
I love that you do that. I think that's such a great thing for the people around you to be able to do
It
that.
was awesome.
How did you kind of start that process, or did you have to get approval a certain way to do it? Did you just think about doing it? I know that some clubs probably haven't even thought about doing that, but then other ones probably in their head immediately think of all the liability issues or the red tape that they would have to go through to try and make that happen. Do you have any advice for people on how to set up something like that in other states or other areas like you have?
Well, so one of the things that I did, because I understand the hesitancy with schools and insurance. So uh, if you have a registered club and you're following all your club rules and you've got your trampoline set up with your belts over the top of it and everything else, um, that that helps. And everybody that comes in on the Saturdays, if they're don't come in with a high school coach, they have to have an AU membership. So if they're coming in with their high school coach, then we don't require that. But if they're coming in on their own, we require an AU membership. And what we'll do with the high school people, I went to my athletic director and told him this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to help build or strengthen the diving coach community to make sure we had more coaches. We could build the entire um, diving community from athletes to coaches because we've been pretty successful. And Vicky and I know each other for a long time. I was at Romeo for a while, and we had some good divers there. And I've been in Lake Orion and Oxford now for quite a while. And we have a lot of success. We've got All-Americans, we've got high school state champions. We're doing cool stuff. But if you're the best, but you've got nobody to compete against, who cares? So if you don't build a community, then the sport will go away. And I explained it to my athletic director, and he just told me, John, do what you do. And I've got the key, we've got the alarm code, and he knows we're there with all the competition coming and communing and getting better as a group every week.
I did have
Right.
problems though. So there's both sides of the coin. And Pioneer was like, no, you can't either. You can't come in because of liability reasons, or you can't come in unless it's considered a scrimmage. So they tried to make it a big deal. And so, that didn't happen very often, even when there weren't, occasionally somebody's coach had to leave for an emergency or something, and I'd be like, well, they can come to my workout. And you know what? I just did it anyway sometimes because it was all under Ann Arbor Public Schools insurance, so it shouldn't have mattered. But some are lucky, like you are, and others that they're like, no way, you're not bringing that in there. Not happening.
But how do you host a meet with that? I mean, versus having kids from another team come to practice with you? What's the difference?
Well, a meet is on the schedule, and you're only allowed a certain number of competitions for a season. And so you can't go over that. And definitely
Okay.
your kids wouldn't qualify if you won that meet the way that Michigan does it. If you won that meet, you could not use that towards qualifying for state meet. You are allowed, I think, 2 scrimmages possibly. Um, but the point is, they didn't want to deal with it. They're like, no, no, they just didn't want to go out there as opposed to what John's got going, where everybody's really receptive. I think they appreciated that I was trying to be kind and include people and help somebody else because their coach wasn't there, but they didn't want to deal with all the other stuff. They're like, no, we're just not going to do that.
Yeah. Lazy ADs. I know.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a great idea. I mean, I'd love to see every state and every program trying to do that to help, mentor more coaches and get more knowledge. I mean, the only way our sport gets better is if everyone gets better. So you might as well just keep making everyone as best as they can be, right?
Yeah, John, I mean,
So
here in Cincinnati, if somebody knew that there was going to be somebody on Saturdays pulling ropes over a 1 meter board, that there'd be a line at the door.
yeah, I
There are
think that's
times I
great.
get home Saturday afternoon very, very, very tired.
It's a good workout.
Yes.
That kind of goes into another question that I have. So I know some of you have amazing facilities with trampolines and with belts and all that. A lot of high schools, that's not necessarily the case. There might be one meter. There might be a 1 meter that's in between swimming lanes. There might be a 1 meter that only gets down for an hour because of swimming practice. You might also be taking away time from club programs, depending on where you're training. One of the issues with high school diving is just having the right resources, facilities, and time to actually be able to train your athletes. I know we've already kind of touched on this a little bit today about doing stuff in line while you're waiting or doing stuff off the side of the pool if possible. But what advice do you have or for coaches that might only have an hour a day with their kids or an hour a couple days a week or just very limited pool time and that you're not able to maybe get as many reps off the board in? Or how do you sort of make your time as meaningful as possible with them?
I'll tell you the one thing my dad used to say, because sometimes people would go and um, I think in his view, kind of waste their time. He said the event is not called belts. It's not called trampoline. It's not called porta pit. It's called diving. And if you don't have enough time, then you dive. That's what the sport is. You get on the board and you do the diving. So And maybe there are things you could do dry land out of that time. But if you're reduced to a very short time, then you got to do dives on the board. You can't be doing 50,000 jumps. You got to do a few and get some dives going, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna jump in on that one, and yeah, Vicky, exactly that. I would say for those that are limited on time, but they can stay longer, depending on their state association's rules. If you only got an hour, you can do a half hour to another hour of dryland practice after that. There's so much, calisthenics, there's body positioning. Every diver needs abs. I mean, come on. There's tons of stuff that you can do on the dryland if you know what to do, or if you look out for the resources on, what you can do to help certain things. You can do your modeling drills. You can do all of your jumps and stuff on the ground. Maybe stack some mats up and do it off of, you know, foot and a half high mat onto the ground. There's a lot of stuff you can do in dryland. You just kind of have to be creative, and ask questions, and hopefully things like this. The beginning coach can go out there and say, "Oh, I can do this. Oh, no, I can't really do that. Oh, I got a wall bar. What are some stuff we can do on the wall bar?" Which I think is an unused resource in a lot of places. So yeah, if you're only limited to the hour, see if you can get an extra half hour to an hour before or after, and you can get a 2 hour practice in and do, really kind of get a jump on the competition that way, in my opinion. So that's what I would do.
No, I think that's great. I mean, it's really important that, you might only have 1 hour of water time, but assuming you're allowed on the pool deck, you can always either do stuff before or after. And I think a lot of coaches forget that or might not realize if they might have that access. So it's important to see, okay, can we train for an hour before or half an hour after? Because you can get a lot done even if you only have that 1 hour in the pool. Then when you get in the pool, you can get right into it. You're not trying to like warm up their bodies as they're getting right into it, for sure. And then just because you said about resources, we have added, I think, over 1,200 videos on our back end of our website for the PDCA right now, and we're constantly adding more every single day. So if anyone ever wants like dry land drills or 1 meter drills or any type of drills, like we are constantly trying to add things. Also, if anyone has any great drills that would be beneficial to other coaches, please feel free to send them to us and we'll put them on our website because we want to share all these different resources. I mean, some people have amazing facilities and some people don't have the same type of resources. So I think having videos to show ways to do the same thing with different types of equipment or lack thereof is really beneficial. So I'm going to put a call out that if anyone has any type of really good drills or skills or anything, send them to us and we'll put them on our website for you. But Courtney, I know you wanted to say something.
Yeah, I'll say the one thing. In addition to having dry land stuff, whether you got a tramp and a board or just the side of the pool, all balks go in the water. If you only have an hour and you've got kids that are learning along with kids that are already doing like bigger dives, all balks go in the water. If they're not willing to go on that rep, they can't take the time away from somebody else. So all balks go in the water. That's something that we do. Also at our pool, if somebody's not ready to go and they're not on the board, by the time we count to 5, everybody has pike ups, regardless of whose fault it was for not diving. So I think just managing the expectation that the divers are expected to show up on time, be ready to go, and be ready to do the work and be focused. If you only have an hour, they can be present for the whole hour.
I was gonna piggyback off of that, Courtney. The balk rule, I have a 2 balk rule. If you do 2 balks, you get off and you do pike ups, and it works.
It
The
does. It definitely does. Yep.
boys are a little
Kids
bit more
jump in.
reluctant, but the girls love it.
Yeah, yeah. Our kids jump in now. They might try to get away with it if they think that we're not looking. They might turn around and start walking back down, but we're like, not get in, and they don't like it, but it keeps practice moving faster for sure.
Well, and if you're in the middle of a meet, you're not going to balk. You're going to go. Assuming that you're safe, you got to learn how to go on anything safely.
Mhm.
But,
Yes.
well, I have a handful of more questions, but also to be mindful of time, I wanted to open it up for other people on the call if anyone had any specific questions that anyone on here could ask or answer for you. Obviously, I can ask you more questions that I have on my list, but does anyone on this call have any questions that they need help or advice they want to give out?
I just had a question about, so I have a couple of athletes that are really, really talented athletes, and they really, really struggle with like their mental game. they can completely do the dive and we've walked through the dive, we talked about it, we've done all the drills. How do you guys approach like getting athletes out of their head and get them like help them through that? Because that's what I really struggle with.
That's a tough one. I mean, there's certain things that you can help with. You can always encourage them, and go back through all the drills and skills. For me personally, just from coaching for as long as I have, I've kind of decided that I can help as much as I can, but if it's something that's really, really big, I try to seek help from some other resource because I'm just a diving coach. I don't have a PhD in sports psychology or anything like that. So when it gets past something that just needs a little bit more encouragement, I always just try to maybe outsource that. And I don't know, some schools have programs where they've got people that the kids can go talk to about that, like if it's a private school or something. I know a lot of the public schools don't, but personally for me, that's just what I do. There's just a lot going on in the 11 weeks, and I've got a club team and other stuff. So sometimes it's hard to take that on. So I say that just to say you don't have to try to solve every problem that a diver has. Like, don't try to necessarily take that on yourself and feel like you're not doing everything that you can, because that's not necessarily what you are there to do. You're there to teach them how to dive. So I say that just to say don't feel like you got to rack yourself. There's other resources out there, and hopefully the PDCA will have some resources as far as that's concerned too as well.
Yeah. So on that same note, I agree with you, Courtney. I've had some kids that I've actually referred to, sports psychologists saying, hey, you need to work on what you're focusing on and how you're training. I do train all our kids that when it comes to meets, I don't expect anything different in a meet than I expect every day in practice. And I expect them to have fun in meets and stop putting, I don't encourage pressure at meets because the pressures for practice. That's where we actually have to learn stuff. But one of the things that I found, if it's not too severe, is if you can get an athlete to start, if you can get them moving, and once they're moving and you get them to a point where they're comfortable, they can finish. Um, one of my best current divers, the high school kids, um, went 415, 415 this an 11 dive meet, but we still when it's time to do gainer 1.5s, we're mentally thinking, all right, I want a nice high tall gainer somersault to your head. We don't talk about the gainer 1.5 because that gives them an issue, but we a nice tall safe gainer somersault and then press it out, put it on your head, and that's how we talk about it. Inward 1.5 pike. Sometimes he'll do inward double and he's working inward 2.5, but inward 1.5 pike. We do lead up inward somersault pike. All right, now inward somersault pike to your head, and just to get him moving without him thinking about that big scary thing. Sometimes that helps.
Courtney, I think too, like, um, you know, different kids are different. Like some people like to go and hide away and not watch what's going on in the diving. And then there were people like me who, first of all, there wasn't much diving. So I always wanted to watch whoever was diving because you didn't get to see much. And I wanted to know kind of where I was in the contest. That was my personality. And so whether you want to or not, you're already a sports psychologist to a certain extent. We all are. But I think some things you can talk about with them is that, if you've done the preparation, say we've done the preparation, you've been doing them fine in practice. The other thing you could do, and this is also something you could do outside of actual water time, is go through some simple visualization drills with them. Have them sit down with their eyes closed or lay down with their eyes closed and say, okay, we're going to do our forward optionals. Or, you can say, okay, think of the first dive, think of your favorite dive. Let's think about that one first. And I think, like, for me, I don't remember anybody teaching it to me. I don't know why, but I kind of already did that when I was young. I could look at it like it was a videotape in my head. So I think like talking to kids about visualizing you hitting the dive, as opposed to when you're learning a new dive and all you can think about is the 100 ways you're going to die. But I think you can also turn it around and go, okay, let's visualize it's like talking in the affirmative as opposed to the negative kind of thing.
Yeah, thank you for that advice. I would say, sports psychologists are great. Just make sure they understand the sport of diving. I've definitely talked to a handful of sports psychologists for different reasons for athletes and things, and they just don't understand our sport necessarily. So make sure that if you are sending an athlete to a sports psychologist, that it's someone who understands what diving is. Same with an athletic trainer or a physical therapist. It's always important to make sure they understand our sport specifically, just because we have a few little nuances that are different than other sports. It's like, oh, they have a mental block, they can't go. Well, just tell them to suck it up. It's like, well, that's not really how it works in our sport. So I would just say be mindful of that. Also, if you're near a university, you can always partner with the PhD program, the sports psychology department at a university. And a lot of times their PhD students have to get a certain amount of hours working with athletes. So you can partner them with your actual athletes as long as they sign the appropriate consent and everything. But a lot of people don't realize that PhD students need a lot of help with that too. So it's sort of like a win-win. They get free
Yeah.
sports psychology and the students get the free like help and everything, learning more about how to work with athletes.
That's a
And,
good tip.
Yeah.
Chelsea, just kind of going off of that, if you do send athletes to a sports psychologist and they don't know about the diving world, I would highly recommend ask if they have anything to do with gymnastics, cheerleading, trampoline, tumbling, or aerials. Because in my experience, a lot of at least down here in this part of Texas, a lot of them come from gymnastics backgrounds. So it's not diving specific what we do, but it's super, super similar to what we kind of go through. And I've had some really good successes with sending some of my athletes to sports psychologists that had the gymnastics and or trampoline and tumbling background working versus just a regular sports psychologist that deals with football, basketball, baseball type of thing like you're talking about. So definitely want just kind of want to throw that out there. If you do have one in your area, um, ask if they're have any knowledge in acrobatic sports. So.
No, that is definitely a great point because they're very similar, so that they should be able to have it make a little bit more sense for sure. Does anyone else have questions for the panel? Anyone on this call? Advice you need with high school diving or beginner diving?
I have a question about judging. So, a lot of the times, how do you guys deal with, some swim coaches are judges and they don't know any of the rules and they just kind of look at everybody else for help before they give their score? Or how do you deal with officials that are more versed in the swimming world as far as diving and just kind of any biases and stuff like that for judging?
So
Doesn't Texas have a good,
That's
sorry,
yeah.
Charlie could say, doesn't Texas have a good training situation for the swimming
Well,
or for the
y
officials?
yes and no. We do have a test that all diving officials must take to be part of our championship season, and then in certain parts of Texas, they actually use that for coaching officials. It's not a test about how well of a judge you are; it's whether you know the rules.
Mm.
And it's at least a starting point of going forward of fielding a panel. At least they know the rules. They may not necessarily know how to judge, especially for us as that are diving coaches as a profession, but they should at least know the rules so they can kind of have a starting point when they're in a contest. I know Penny, you're on the call. I mean, you can jump in here and kind of give a little bit more into that. Penny is in charge of our UIL and the test that we all have to take here. So, Penny, you should probably jump in and finish answering this question.
Mhm. Well, it's now it now comes through the NFHS. We used to have our own that we wrote for many years, but we use the NFHS's test, and they do have some videos of people doing dives, and then they say, what kind of score or whatever, and this would be in this area or not. So there's a little bit there, but Charlie's right. It's mainly rules, but if you're if you're going to be officiating, you should know what a deficient dive is and all of those things. And it does go through all different scoring. In addition to the rules, they have to have a background check. So it's all that kind of stuff. And also in Texas, we can use coaches to judge in the normal events. We can. But in the championship events, district, regionals, and state, they can be coaches, but they have to be certified coaches through what we're doing. They can't just come and do it. No one can. And at state, you can't have anyone in the event. You can't be related to anyone in the event. Whether you're a club coach, if you're a club coach and you have a club kid in there, you can't judge. So it's a little stricter when they get to state. But at the district and regional levels, they can have their own coaches as long as they are certified. So
I mean, I always say you wouldn't want me officiating a swim meet
Yeah.
Yeah.
because I don't know anything about it. And I don't, some of these swim coaches think they, I guess, know enough about diving to be dangerous, but
Towards the end of the season in Michigan, they at the regionals, I think John can correct me, at the regionals and the state meet, they go with two panels. So there are times when you can tell who the referee is when everybody gives it a 4.5, 5, and he gives it an 8. And that does happen in the state of Michigan. I think that they look the worst on twisters because when someone twists by on something on the end, they don't catch the nuance of that. But that might help because the coaches do judge in Michigan, and they did in New Mexico as well. And I think you could mitigate that a little bit by having two panels.
Mhm.
So Vicky, the only place that we use the two panels right now is the Miska meet, our Miska
Oh,
Invitational.
okay.
That's where our two panels are. But we actually try to use that as a training ground. That's a top 32 divers in the state get together, all divisions,
Right.
and
I
just go
thought
head
they
to
were
head
doing
all
it in
11
the
dives.
state.
And we use that, and part of the reason we use two panels is because I mix up veteran and younger coaches who are judging
Yeah.
to try to help them learn how to judge in a larger meet format. But one of the things that we do, Sage, in Michigan is if you're going to be on a regional panel, you're going to be in a state panel. Everybody on those panels knows that there's going to be a judging analysis that's done and published. And we have judging analysis going back for 15 years on the MISCO website behind the paywall. So only members see it. We had to move it. I used to keep it front and center on the MISCO website, but then you'd have parents looking at it who couldn't understand it or interpret it, and they just used it to beat up the MHSAA. So that got moved back behind the paywall. So if you're a MISCA member, you can actually look and say you're at a regional meet. I think you're D2. So you can go back and look at your D3. Thank you. So you can go back and you can look at your D3 regionals, and you can actually see the scores that were thrown in every regional meet and every state meet. And if a coach has bias, what we found is if you make the coaches aware and the judges aware that their performance is going to be peer reviewed for bias, they pay a little more attention. And a lot of the times the bias isn't intentional. So if it's just brought to their attention, pay attention to your own bias because it is obvious if you start mistreating judges or mistreating divers or you're favorable to other divers. But if you know everybody's going to be looking at it, you have a little more reason to behave.
See, and we're a little more fortunate in Texas because except for our smaller division of 4A, but 5A, 6A, there are quite a few diving coaches. So we have a lot of diving coaches that are high school coaches that are on the panels even at district and regionals. Probably less at district, but a lot more at regionals. And that's also very helpful for us.
So I'll say here in Florida, one of the things that I do before every event, at the meets that I host, and especially the state meets, you give your speech to the athletes behind the diving board and you talk to them about what the rules are and what the expectations are, and don't stand behind the board, and you go through all the stuff. But before we start judging, I kind of give a little spiel to the judges as well. Go over what the categories are. Here's what we're looking for. Don't be afraid to throw the high scores, but also, as Vicky mentioned earlier, the nuance of the twist on the bottom. It's where the hands hit. or where your feet hit, where your shoulders are. So knowing that rule, knowing, okay, there's a twister coming up. I need my eyes to be focused on specific things at specific times, and just kind of saying, hey, pay attention to this. And here's the rules, arms up and stuff like that. And mostly in Florida, I've got all club coaches that I work with. There's no way that we could have just high school coaches. Like there would be absolutely none of us, no judges available at all if we did that. But even with the club coaches that I know judge at other meets, I still have to give them the lowdown and make sure that they're focused on very specific things before we get started. So even if you don't know what all else they've done, if you're able to talk to them about, hey, here's the scoring chart. I even have them printed out, like the scoring chart and what the categories are. I have them laminated, and we have to use tents because all of our pools are outside. So on the arms of the tents, I'll have them hanging up right there in the judges section. So it's like right there in front of their face to look at. And that always seems to help too. Look at the overall impression. What are you saying about that dive? Is it a good dive? Okay, so it probably should be in a 5 to a 6.5, just kind of going over those things with them before the meet starts.
Yeah, I think that's all really great advice. I mean, in an ideal world, we'd have really great coaches be the judges all the time. Unfortunately, in high school, it's not the case. I know when I was in high school, we had our parents judging, which was definitely awkward for a lot of reasons. So, it is something that, we'd like to try and figure out how to get standards across the country to make it better. But I think, the tips you guys gave are really helpful for that because it's not a perfect system, especially when you've got people who don't understand your sport who are supposed to be judging it, or they're judging based on the name or who the person is or what looks cool or whatever it might be. So I think trying to educate people, and it's also, you don't want to overstep, but I think just sort of like, hey, yeah, so we're looking for this, or being mindful is really helpful. I appreciate you asking that question, Sage. Does anyone else have any other questions, thoughts, comments, advice that they want to give out to everyone?
I had one other question for the panel. How many of you have middle school diving in your state? That's in Ohio. They have, or at least in Cincinnati, they do. And they do 3 dives. It's a real short season. They have a champ meet, but it's packed with parents and grandparents. And it seems to be a good feeder system for the high school. So I was just curious if anybody else had junior high or middle school diving.
We do, and it's all year. It's their class. It's their competitive athletics class
Oh, wow.
So they go all year long every morning all year long. And obviously that's helpful for our high school teams.
For sure.
You to go. So, but yeah, we have it.
They're getting rid of our pools in the middle schools here. They're pools that have cracks in them, that are old, and it's just too much money to fix them up and to find people that will coach and stuff like that. So they've really stopped that a lot.
We have a district facility, so we bus all of the 10 middle schools in to our facility every morning. So
wow.
Yeah.
I know the state of Minnesota, their school curriculum is you learn how to swim in middle school. So all the pools are at the middle schools. So the high school divers and swimmers have to go to the middle school to practice and compete, which is interesting.
Yeah.
It's a great idea.
Yeah. One silly question. Do your schools require that the boys wear Speedos? I always thought of that as a barrier to getting some kids to want to dive because they didn't want to wear a Speedo.
No, it's not a requirement. But the divers that we do get that wear jammers, and we go to higher meets, and then they see the other divers in Speedos, especially the good ones.
Yeah.
And after a while, they're like, oh, okay, I need to do this. So
Yeah.
it kind of washes out and corrects itself. So, but at least for me down here, it's not a requirement, but divers that do get it or do start with jammers eventually just get into Speedos on their own.
Okay, that's good.
We don't force Speedos either, but they do at least have to wear jammers. We don't let anybody dive in like board shorts or anything like that.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we're in the same boat. And I've had divers start with jammers. Usually what I've often done is grab the old Speedo training square trunks and
Oh,
use those as a transition. But what Charlie said spot on. You know, they're wearing jammers because they don't want to wear a Speedo, because if they wear a Speedo, they stand out because nobody wears Speedos that they know. All the
Right.
swimmers are wearing jammers. And then all of a sudden they realize that if they're the only one in a jammer, now they're standing out and everybody's looking at them differently.
yeah.
So yeah, they get with the program pretty much on their own usually.
Good.
Sorry, I was muted. Well, I really appreciate everyone taking the time to talk today, to share advice, to ask questions. There's so much, advice to go out for high school diving, beginner coaches, coaches at all levels, honestly. Like I said, we're really trying to make the PDCA be a much more big resource when it comes to mentorships, education, being that place to try and find different resources. So, but these like town halls are just so much better than, us just saying, go watch a video. I think actually like interacting and hearing what different people have to say around the country is really great. I know I'm really excited about our high school committee just because high school diving is so different around the country. It's just crazy how we can talk about every different state and they're all different with their skills and their rules and their schedules and all this stuff. So hopefully we can try and find a way to sort of try and unify them and get people to buy into us trying to get them to be unified. But if you ever have advice and you want to share it, let us know, and I'm happy to, figure out the best outlet to share it. If you need advice, let us know, and we're happy to put you in the right direction, everything. Yes, Vicky.
I sent a note to John earlier today, a text, but I know we have what, 15 or 20 people. Is that about right, what we have? But I think one thing that would be helpful for that committee is if we could somehow get at least one coach from every state to send in the gist of how many dives what they do in their dual meets, how you qualify for a regional, district, sectional, and then how you qualify for your state meet. Because I think that way the committee can kind of look at it and go, okay, well, these people do it this way, these states. This one's, I'll tell you right now, New Mexico's like none you've ever seen before. And then we could maybe have a little better understanding of, like they were talking about, how we want to sort of see if we can come up with some basic standards that we can then suggest to the national people. This is what we think would be a great idea to make it more streamlined. If we could get people from all the states to come up and send the rules into you or John, and we could make a doc out of it to look at.
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the things that the committee is going to be responsible for is getting those from every single state. So, however the committee decides they want to collect that information, we're definitely going to make sure that every single state is looked at, which is why we made our committee so big, just to like help with the getting those resources, because I think it's good to look at all of them, see what's good, what's bad, what could be changed, what looks the same across different states, because they're all, like I said, they're all different. So I know it's a great idea. That's definitely one of the things that the committee is going to do is get everything from all 50 states and then look at it and interpret what could be used that's the best from all of them. So this town hall will be put up on YouTube within the next week. So if anyone wants to watch it or rewatch it, but like I said, if anyone has any questions, ideas, or things that they need, please let us know. But thank you so much for the panel to being on this, answering questions. Thank you for all those of you who spoke that were not on the panel and gave great advice or asked questions. I think it's great to be able to come together and have a conversation, and appreciate you guys taking a Sunday night to do that. So I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your evening and let me know if you need anything at all.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everybody.
Chelsea, for the opportunity.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.
Mm.